let's talk about Ukraine. I mean, Trump has deviated from the establishment consensus on Ukraine. I never understood, perhaps you can unpack it for me, the whole Ukraine policy, other than as a kind of proxy war to degrade the Russian military and isolate Putin. I was in East Germany uh, when the Berlin Wall came down as a reporter. I was there when the promises were made to Gorbachev not to extend NATO beyond the borders of a unified Germany. And of course, as you know, the Soviet Union had to acquiesce to the reunification of Germany, and that was the promise made. And then we kind of, I'm not defending the invasion, obviously, of Ukraine, but we certainly baited the Russians and Putin. But let's talk about Ukraine. I don't see how any military strategist seriously could think that in a war of attrition, the Ukrainians could dominate. But explain what's happening, and then how you see, if there is going to be a difference, how you see a difference in a Trump administration's uh, policy towards Ukraine and Russia.
Let me say first, I was there too. I was special assistant to Chairman Powell, and the change that took place with the advent of Bill Clinton was absolutely disastrous. And I attribute to William Jefferson Clinton a lot of the problems we're living with today, including the violation, major violation, of that promise not to expand NATO. That's a longer story, better enough for another time. I think what we're looking at in Ukraine vis-a-vis Trump, or Trump vis-a-vis Ukraine, is his, and I think Doug McGregor, for example, is right about this. I just watched him on Judge Napolitano's show, is his disdain for war. I think it's genuine. I don't think he likes war. I don't think he likes starting wars. I don't think he would be a president who, he'll go off and kill someone like the Iranian IRGC member or other people whom he's told are terrorists or whatever. But I don't think he wants war, qua war. And so he's willing to shut down Ukraine. Now, there's another reason, too. I think he detests NATO for different reasons than I. I don't like NATO much either. I think it's well beyond its sell-by date. And he sees NATO as being, and he's right in this, as big an aider and abetter, Brussels is, of the war in Ukraine as Washington is, led by that perfidious Albion, London. And so he wants to shut that down. And I think his ultimate goal is to not to abandon NATO per force, but he wants to get the United States out of its relationship with NATO, which is, he thinks, we pay for everything, we do all the heavy lifting, they do very little, come back to the United States, as it were, and say, you've got our nuclear umbrella, but everything else you do, because we're not with you anymore. And, of course, save the money that saves, too. I think that's part of his, I think it was part of his first term, and he just didn't get to do it the way he wanted to do it. So those, I think, are the major reasons that he will be positive with regard to Ukraine, because you're right, Ukraine is a disaster right now.
Yeah.
And most, apparently, for Ukraine, they're dying by the dozens every day now, and they have no people left. They're having difficulty. They're having to impress young people, bring them into the military to get them to fight. And they're lucky if they don't desert within the first week, because either going over to the Russians or running away wherever they can go. It's a disaster. And we don't have generals in the Pentagon saying this. Now, we have Lloyd Austin. He's right there with Joe Biden. But we don't have generals in the Pentagon, in my view anyway, who are expressing these kinds of views that generals on the outside are expressing, like David Petraeus and Barnes and other generals who are saying, well, Russia's losing. They're lying through their teeth. They're lying through their teeth. Either that or they're just stupid and incredibly dumb, really, not just stupid. So I think Trump would shut that down, and I'm looking forward to that. I hope he does. I hope he shuts it down forthwith.
Well, they should have read the history of Germany's invasion of the Soviet Union. Stalin would send out 1 million men who would either get captured or die and then he'd just send out another million. It was kind of the Putin
Yeah,
strategy.
yeah. And people don't realize that the Wehrmacht, right after it invaded, really, the first 14 months began to lose almost immediately.
Yeah.
Partly because of its rapine as it moved along. It made enemies of everyone in its path. Even Napoleon wasn't that stupid. And partly because they overextended, and partly because the rule of thumb that Hitler thought would work, his food minister told him it would work, that all that food coming from Ukraine and the steppes of Russia would feed not only the Wehrmacht forces going that way, but Germany too, didn't come true.
Yeah, that's because the Russians destroyed everything in a scorched
Yeah.
earth policy. We can do another
Yeah.
show on World War II, which I have an obsession with, but he also split his forces because of Stalingrad.